So here we have the latest issue of Sound on Sound magazine. It's dated September 2021. Well, it's only August at the moment, but who's counting? So what does it say on the cover? Choosing monitors. Choosing monitors. And quite clearly it says your most important buying decision. Well, what I'd like to consider here is whether it is indeed your most important buying decision and what can happen if you get it wrong. Firstly, I'll say that this is an excellent article. It's long and detailed. It's written by Chris Korff, who's someone I've spoken to on a number of occasions, but I'm not sure whether we've ever actually met in person over the years. In fact, I'd say that the article contains just about everything that, as a producer or engineer, you'd need to know about monitor loudspeakers. So I'd recommend that you get the mag and read the article. You can buy the mag on the newsstands now, or you can go to soundonsound.com and get a digital subscription. So, choosing monitors, what is it that you have to decide? We can simplify this in a number of ways. And firstly, I'll make a big simplification and say big or small. Do you want big monitors or do you want small monitors? Or we could say main monitors or near-field monitors. What do I mean by main monitors? I mean monitors that are large and are some distance away from you as the engineer. Here's a photo of a BBC radio studio and you can see their monitors. They're some distance from the engineer. They're also spaced away from the walls, which is the way the BBC likes it. So when you listen on main monitors, you're hearing the sound from the monitors directly and you're hearing quite a lot of reverberation from the room. You're listening pretty much as a real-world listener would listen, although on better quality equipment, in better acoustics. Small monitors, on the other hand, you would probably use as near fields. What this means is that the monitors are so close to you that you hear mostly the direct sound, and the reflected sound from the room is insignificant in comparison. So this is a good way of working. It's not the only way of working, but it's a good way. And small loudspeakers are commonly used as near-field monitors, which isn't to say they have to, but they are. So we can cut through this quickly and say that you're going to choose small monitors and use them in the near field. The reason for this is that maybe you can't afford big monitors, or more likely, you don't have the space for big monitors. So small it is, and let's stick with that. By the way, if you want to learn how to make your buying decisions, I'm not telling you what to buy, but learn how to make these decisions, then you might take a look at Equipping Your Home Recording Studio, which is a downloadable ebook that you can get from Audio Masterclass. I'll put the link down in the description. So your next decision is whether you should choose accurate monitors or flawed monitors. That sounds like a peculiar thing. Why would you want bad monitors? There's a good reason why, and I will tell you in a moment. So how can monitors be flawed? There are two principal ways. One is the frequency response and one is the time response. There are other ways, but frequency and time are the main two, in my opinion. So the frequency response should be flat with a good extension on the low frequency end. If it goes like that, it's not so good because you're not hearing all the bass that you need to hear to make good monitoring decisions. But it is a fundamental law of physics that to get good low frequency, a good extension on the low frequency end, you need big loudspeakers. And there really is no substitute for that. But we've already said that you're going to choose small loudspeakers. So what can we do? The answer to this is to make the small loudspeaker a bass reflex design. So there are two main alternatives. One is the closed box, which is completely sealed. The other is the bass reflex, where the inside of the cabinet is connected through a tube to a hole to the outside world. And this gives the bass reflex loudspeaker a resonant frequency. And if the designer positions that resonant frequency just where the roll-off would have otherwise started, you can get a bit of extra extension on the bass. And that's a good thing. More bass. And we all like that. But there's a problem with that. Imagine a kick drum, or a bass drum, as we sometimes like to call it in the UK. So the drummer hits the pedal and the kick drum goes out. That's the way the head of the kick drum will move. So that's the way your loudspeaker diaphragm should move as well. Kick out, kick in. Diaphragm out, diaphragm in. That's the way it should be if you've got a good time response. But the problem with the bass reflex loudspeaker is that it has a resonance. And what this means is when the kick drum goes kick out, kick in, the diaphragm of the loudspeaker goes kick out, bounce around a bit. Okay. Kick out, bounce around a bit, back in again. Okay, that sounds funny. I can't stop myself laughing. But you get the idea. So instead of going boom like that, it goes boom like that also, if you get the idea. So what's the problem? You've got a boomy bass. And worse still, it centres around one frequency, which is the resonant frequency. So sometimes, and I didn't make this up, sometimes we call this a one-note bass, and that is characteristic of bass reflex speakers. Of course, designers will try their best to ameliorate this. Some designs are worse, and the one-note bass effect will be worse. Some designs are better, and the one-note bass effect is as good as it possibly can be within reasonable parameters. So what I can say from this is that the closed box is going to be more accurate time-wise than the bass reflex loudspeaker, and more accuracy should seem like a good thing. Well, it is a good thing. It's a very good thing because it will tell you exactly what's in your recording. Or in the olden days, we would say, what's on the tape. It tells you exactly what's on the tape. And as an engineer, that's what you need to know. You need to have as much information as possible about what your recording actually sounds like, irrespective of the monitor loudspeaker. So that's a good thing. It's a really good thing because you can make all your recording and mixing decisions in full knowledge of what's on the tape, at least as nearly as possible. But the thing is, that's not what your listeners hear, because your listener has bass reflex loudspeakers. Nearly all commercially sold hi-fi loudspeakers are bass reflex designs, simply because there's more bass and people like more bass. And why shouldn't they? And it has to be said that the average music lover doesn't really care whether there's a one-note bass or not. In fact, they might choose loudspeakers particularly because they like the note that they produce. And once again, why not? If that's what people like, you can't argue against that. So as an engineer and producer working in your own studio, your home studio perhaps, you also need to know what your listeners are hearing. So you need to know what's on the tape and what your listeners hear. So should you choose a closed box to hear accurately what's on the tape, or should you choose bass reflex loudspeakers so you hear what your listeners hear? Well, it isn't an either or choice. If you can afford it, you should have both. You should have the closed box and the bass reflex. Now, for me, I prefer the closed box, and indeed I have the classic Yamaha NS10M. I love these loudspeakers. I know a lot of people quibble with them for one reason or another, but when I listen to my recordings, or anybody's recordings, through these loudspeakers, I feel as though I'm hearing exactly what the recording sounds like, exactly what's on the tape. Whereas if I listen through bass reflex monitors, I'm hearing an interpretation of that. So if I'm making a serious recording, I'll do all my recording, editing and mixing, listening through my closed box loudspeakers because I know that they're more accurate. But before I finalise the project, I will check them on a pair of bass reflex monitors. I've got a pair of KRK Rocket 5, so I'm not particularly recommending those. They're just one of a number of good bass reflex loudspeakers. And if need be, I'll tweak my mix so it sounds as good as possible on both the closed box and on the bass reflex. So going back to sound on sound, this is apparently the most important decision you'll ever make. But we can take this a stage further. Okay, you've decided whether to choose closed box or bass reflex or both. Great, but which make and model do you choose of each? This most important buying decision. The thing is, though, that a decision may be between something that's obviously good and obviously bad. In which case, the decision is easy to make. You choose the thing that's obviously good. But you might be choosing between two things which are very, very close, and you can't really tell which is good and which is bad. Well, the answer is almost there for you. If you can't tell the difference, it doesn't matter which you choose. Okay, there could be some element of chance that could have swayed your decision one way or another if you had access to more information, but in the big wide world of recording, it really isn't going to matter all that much. Because, two things. The first is that nearly every loudspeaker that's sold into the pro audio market is fully capable of professional results, with very few exceptions. So when you've bought your monitors, whether they're closed box, bass reflex, or if you're lucky enough, both, and you've decided on a make and model, the next step is to learn how to use them. Yes, you have to learn how to use your monitors. The reason for this is that you don't really know what they sound like. Yes, you can plug them in and play some music through them, and you can hear what they sound like, but you haven't learned what they sound like. The way you do that is to get some music which is in your favourite genre or style, music that you would like to emulate or work in the same genre or style, and preferably you should choose successful commercial releases. So if your music can sound like a successful commercial release, surely it's got a good chance of being successful. itself. So you gather together some successful commercial releases on a Spotify playlist or something like that, and you play them through your new monitor loudspeakers in your studio. So over time, you get to learn what your monitor loudspeakers sound like. So there we have it. Now you know how to make your most important buying decision. Or, as I said earlier, you can download Equipping Your Home Recording Studio, the ebook from Audio Masterclass, and that will cover the whole range of studio equipment. It won't tell you what to buy, but it'll tell you how to go about deciding. I'm David Mellor, Course Director of Audio Masterclass. Thank you for listening.